What's up? So today, I'm starting the process of revisiting the EMG 81. But I'm not just looking at the 81 by itself. I'll be looking at the 81 with the 24 volt mod, the EMG 81X, and the James Hetfield signature pickup. Additionally, I'm going to throw in a Fishman Fluence Modern ceramic just to see how it stacks up against the 81 and all the different variants. My primary question in all this is, by revisiting the 81, am I coming back to something that was already kind of perfect as it was? Or have we taken what was the pristine metal sound and made it into something else? Because you go into forums, you go on to Facebook, social media, you have kind of two camps when it comes to active pickups. You have the hardcore EMG lovers, and you have the hardcore fishman people. I kind of like both. Really, is one better, or are they just different, or are they just kind of the same thing and we just think they're different? So to set this up, I'm going to put on a brand new set of Ernie Ball Paradigm strings. Supposedly these are supposed to be really tough strings, hard to break, and I'm going to be loosening, tightening, swapping pickups. I'm going to be doing a lot to this guitar, and I really need a set of strings that's going to hold up. On top of that, throwing a fresh battery, and in doing so, we should have a pretty cool, consistent shootout that hopefully we learn something from. So let's get to it. So you just heard all the pickups in a mix, and you're probably listening and going, I don't know. So I tried to sequence them from what I thought would be the most basic kind of sound to what could be the most aggressive type of sound. So they all sound pretty much the same, honestly. And they all sound pretty good, which is no surprise. I'm using the Neural DSP Fortin Cali suite, which is quickly becoming my favorite high gain offering that Neural DSP has. But also, let's think about this. Mixes, they're not real. If you keep your guitar mix bus super dry, which I did, and you're only using the amp plugin and the built-in IR, you still end up with this sonic array of noise that has to be glued together on the mix bus. And everything gets, louder when you use software to master your track. So The idea of unprocessed isn't really feasible in a mix. And in metal, you often use compression, EQ, some sort of soft clipping or, limiting software, to make the sound not only clear and consistent, but also loud. So trying to really tell anything about these pickups in a high gain mix other than, sounds good, bro, probably won't hear that drastic of a change between, any of them. Now, that doesn't mean that I wasn't able to hear some differences, some shifts in both kind of the overall output and sort of what the mid-range was doing. But I also mixed the track, so I'm somewhat biased in what I'm hearing. So why don't we go ahead and listen to these isolated tracks first, and then we can kind of discuss further what I think I might be hearing. I also went ahead and sort of randomized the order of the pickups from what we heard in the full mix, just so you can kind of hear some different pickup types up against each other. All right, so in isolation, there's slightly more apparent differences, but overall, any one of those pickups could probably be swapped out for the other, and you probably wouldn't even notice. Now, the main caveat to this whole deal here is that Fishman Fluence pickup that I threw in. I sort of cheated, and I used my epiphone prophecy instead of swapping a modern humbucker into this schecter. It really didn't make that much of a difference overall, but, I feel like this pickup had a little bit more low end. That may also be because the set of 11 to 54 strings that I have on here are Diodario's instead of the Ernie Ball Paradigms that I put on this one, and they are a couple days older. So, depending on how much I played in those couple of days, these strings might be a little bit more broken in. So surprisingly though to my ear, the 24 volt mod on the regular 81 and the 81X seemed to be a little bit more in line with the Fishman than what I was hearing from the normal OG 81. And clearly the James Hetfield pickup is the biggest outlier here, as it had a much higher output and a way more aggressive bite than any of the other pickups. Now, the normal 81 stood out to me as being the most articulate and even sounding of the bunch. It had a very clean attack and I think was overall the tightest pickup. The Fishman sometimes gets called out as being just another 81, But Voice 1 on the Modern actually has a bit of a different mid-range peak and a seemingly fuller bottom end than the 81. And it's not as tight to my ear either. Part of the reason I did this video is because I got this particular guitar loaded with an 81 and an 85 set. And after playing Fishman pickups for so long, I was actually really into the sound of the 81. And I would say that the 81 still does the metal thing a little bit better than even the Fishman Moderns. Now, the 81X was not my favorite. And honestly, it doesn't seem to give you anything more than what you can get out of that 24-volt mod. Additionally, to use the 81X, you end up having to install this active tone pot, which is kind of a cool feature because the way it operates, it's more of like a high-end roll-off than a full, frequency sweep. And so it doesn't really change the character of the pickup, it just gives you a little bit of roll-off on that top end, which I actually did like. But honestly, I would probably take the 81 itself, or I would just add more voltage if I really wanted to push the gain on the pickup without, compressing the sound too much. Now the James Hetfield pickup, what I currently have in this guitar and what I'm going to keep in this guitar, is probably the ultimate high gain pickup hands down. You almost don't even need any kind of boost pedal when you're using it. It's basically built from the architecture of the EMG 81, but they really aren't that comparable. This pickup is very dynamic and responsive, and it has just an extra bit of saturation. Out of all the different iterations of the EMG 81, I would say that the James Hetfield and the original pickup by itself are probably my favorites. And where I would say that the 81 and the Fishman Modern sit about equal in terms of what I like, I would say that the James Hetfield pickup is even better than either one of those for what I like to hear. Hence why I'm keeping it in this guitar. I have, however, found a new affinity for the OG EMG 81. So much so that I swapped out my Nazgul and Sentient set from my LTD Baritone and swapped in the EMG 81-85 set because I think it gives me just a slightly tighter and more focused tone. So, if you're only here because you care about the chugging, you can basically stop here. But if you're curious about, the clean tones, let's listen to some right now. So with the cleans, you basically have nowhere to hide. All things are audible. The biggest thing here, though, is the James Hetfield pickup still has so much more output. It really didn't fully clean up. The 24-volt mod does really seem to open up the top end a little bit on the 81, and it gives a little bit more resonance to those low-end notes. The 81X, again here, is fairly underwhelming, but it does have a slightly fuller tone than the original 81. But again, I think the 24-volt mod will probably get you there just the same. With the Fishman, you can tell that the strings are a little bit worn in, but it also has a bit more of a filled out low end, and is still a bit more mid-forward than any of the 81 variations. The original 81 is just kind of okay for cleans. It's a little thin, so here I would probably opt to use either the 24-volt mod or the Fishman for doing clean tones. So, I hope you had fun kind of listening to this demo. They're not night and day differences here. In fact, it's very, very subtle. And I kind of expected that since we're looking at all variations on a very similar theme. Truth be told, the EMG 81 is still one of the best sounding metal pickups, especially for tight, fast metal playing. However, if you just want to get a little bit more aggression, but still keep all the punch of the original 81, this James Hetfield pickup is probably your best bet. Sorry, Fishman. I have almost exclusively like all Fishman pickups in all my guitars. So it isn't really easy to acknowledge that maybe the best sounding pickup that I own might be an EMG. Maybe next time what I'll do is I'll throw the James Hetfield signature pickup up against some of the Fishman signatures that I have and see how it does. But until then, later.